This is the strongest, most OP USSR rank in-game, which has plenty of unbalanced vehicles to choose from.
There's also a giveaway. Again, yes, 30,000 golders, man. You gotta join, man. I love you, man. I beg you, man.
All you gotta do is subscribe and write a comment. That's it. That's all you gotta do. Rank 2 is met by T28, which is extremely good, as even though it weighs 25 tons, it moves better than some of the light tanks, which is just mind-blowing. Survivability is also great, as there are 6 dudes having a party in there. But T28 is one of the few tanks in this rank that doesn't have a lot of armor. However, the cannon is absolutely insane for its tier, as it has great penetration and deals massive damage to enemies. Most of the time you will one-shot everyone you pen, but to get to that point you'll have to unlock this shell right here by using this horrible and absolutely useless shell, which is just pure sadness and pain, as it can't penetrate anything at all. So if you want a strong tank, you'll have to suffer quite a bit first, which is a great way to say welcome to War Thunder. T80. No, not you. Not you. Yep, that's the one. That's the one. To begin with, T80 looks pretty horrible to say the least. When we compare it to the previous tank T70, it got its turret increased in size but decreased in armor, which is pretty bad news for us. But on the other hand, reload speed increased so much that it's just absolutely absurd. T80 is basically an autocannon, as reload speed is only 3.2 seconds, and with better crew it gets to 2.5 seconds. Sounds OP, right? Well, it's good, but there's this one massive issue. T80, because of that same massive turret, started swinging like crazy. So basically, whenever you spot an enemy, you have to wait for a solid half an hour to stop swinging. And it swings worse than the T70, which is an achievement in and of itself. Because of that, you will never be the first one to shoot. Plus, if enemies start moving, turret rotation will be too slow to follow them. Then you'll have to assist turret rotation by rotating the entire tank, and then you'll start swinging again and won't be able to shoot. So T80 has pretty good armor, so you will be able to take a couple of shots, but it's a little bit frustrating to play with. Basically, this tank is extremely good at defense when you're not moving and enemies are coming at you. But as soon as you have to advance forward and attack, well, then it's kinda normal. Now, Gas 72K on the other hand is made for advancing forward, more like rushing in mindlessly, as this boy is so fast it's crazy. On top of that, there's this beautiful 25mm autocannon, which can penetrate everyone from the side and some tanks even from the front. Gas 72K is a super fun vehicle to play with, as you're rushing in straight to the enemy lines, make a tiny flank, and delete half of their team. Obviously, as soon as someone catches you and you hear machine gun shots coming your way, well, it's game over. So you do need to be careful and know your maps pretty well. How is it against planes? Pretty good. It can deal with them, but to be honest, it's way better if used against tanks. T28E. The previous T28 decided to put on some armor. So you see these glowing red and yellow parts? That's the additional 20 and 30mm plates. Does it help? Absolutely. Not so much against higher tiers, but against lower tiers, if you stand a bit sideways, it's just brutal. People can't do anything to you. There's still this one-shot weak spot left, but not a lot of people know about these two parts, so your survivability will be just insane. T28 did lose a bit of mobility and speed, but to be honest, it still feels great. Z's 30, and there's our first sniper boy, which has this long and massive cannon put on top of this kinda tiny body. So whenever you shoot, you almost turn over. This cannon is so powerful that it can literally penetrate Abrams from the front. So basically, there is no armor against you. And when it comes to damage, the answer is yes. What really makes this 30 great is its size and speed, as it is pretty mobile and gives you the ability to relocate pretty quickly if need be. There is this one thing though: as fast as you are, planes are faster, and Z's 30 being open roof means that after you destroy some pilot's tank, you will hear him crying in about 30 seconds, as he will 100% go for you. So if you can, relocate as frequently as possible after getting a kill. All in all, a pretty fun vehicle to play with. And now the moment we've all been waiting for. SU-122. It is the definition of being OP as hell. It is so extremely strong that you have to turn off your monitor to be on somewhat similar level to other players. Basically, you have this insane cannon that usually one-shots everyone. Personally, I use these shells and take a couple of heat shells if I meet something crazy like King Tiger of some sort. But against typical enemies like Leo 2PL, these shells are perfectly okay. Now what about armor? Well, to put it simple, you are armor. I personally made massive mistakes, got surrounded by 4 enemies at a time, being shot from every single angle there is. And not only that I repaired myself and survived, I later killed everyone that was shooting at me. It's just unbelievable. Basically, if you angle yourself and start dancing, people just start shooting at your upper plate hoping that some magic penetration will happen. Obviously, it doesn't happen and you just kill them. Yes, reload speed is horrible, so facing multiple opponents is not a big problem at all, to be honest, because they, again, won't penetrate you if you angle. And if needed, you have so much mobility and speed that you can just drive away and that's it. Problem solved. If you ever find yourself facing this monster, there are 3 things you can do. 1 is to run because you're gonna die. Second option is to shoot his gun mantlet. It's a weak spot that destroys the cannon. So send a couple of shots there and then detrack it so that you could flank and kill it from the side. And third option would be to shoot this part right here. It's a good option only if you have armor piercing shells with explosive filler. Solid shots don't work as well in this case. There's also a dot, literally a dot right here, but it's really hard to hit. Overall, this tank is just absolutely OP. Do you like being fast with a pretty good cannon, extremely mobile, and on top of that have great armor? Well, look no further than T50. I mean, bro, like what do Germans have in 2.7? Panzer III? Like really, dude? Yep, that's balancing. That's some nice balance right there. Basically, T50 is extremely good for beginners because this cannon has good enough ballistics to effectively shoot from further distances. It deals great damage, has okayish penetration. If by some chance you meet M3 GMC, which has insane armor, then load in these shells and go straight through it. There's no problem about it. Even after unlocking every shell, your main one should be the stock one. This APCR is useful only against highly armored opponents. Phenomenal speed of T50 will allow beginners to learn maps, and if they get lost, well, they can just turn around and get back on track no problem. This armor will also save them from any random camper they meet. Obviously, more experienced players will shoot its turret, as that's the weakest part of T50, so it's not that difficult to penetrate it, but a lot of people have issues with it. Just absolutely phenomenal vehicle. After playing with a couple of absolutely OP tanks, you might find yourself wanting more and jumping on SU-57B. And soon enough, you will notice how Germans felt all this time. SU-57 is absolutely not worth your time at all whatsoever. Can you do well with it? Yes, no question about it, because it does have a great gun, as it's pretty much the same one from Z's 30, and unlike Z's 30, it is fully covered, so it has better survivability as it has more armor, right? Well, that's a no, and a pretty strong one. Planes will go straight through this sheet of paper like there's no tomorrow, as this armor is ranked as airsoft proof. Still debatable. All of the crew members are sitting tightly next to each other, so one explosion in the compartment and you're looking at a death cam. Z's 30, that has no armor at all, makes it so that armor-piercing explosive shells do not explode because the fuse is not sensitive enough. SU-57 has just enough of that useless armor to activate the fuse of explosive shells, so survivability for this thing is just non-existent at all. Also, the thing that I noticed, accuracy of SU-57B is just absolutely horrible. As long as it's stock, you're playing World of Tanks basically, because that's how inaccurate it is. I was shocked, to be honest. Like, what is this? It's supposed to be accurate, bro. BTR 152A. Now, this guy, unlike the previous, is really good. BTR 152A does a short work of any plane you face, and fast rate of fire makes it easier to use when compared to Gas 72K. But when it comes to destroying enemy tanks, it is way more difficult, as now there's only a couple of vehicles you can penetrate from the front. Obviously, if you flank your enemies and get from the side, you will find no problem going straight through their armor. Those are very fast and easy kills. The issue itself arises when you have to flank them, as BTR 152 is first of all massive, and second of all, it's slower, way slower than Gas 72. So basically, it's more of an anti-air vehicle than a tank destroyer, which is actually what it's meant to do. I recommend this vehicle really good, especially against planes. Unfortunately, Gas 72K heard that the only issue it had was the rate of fire, so it got another cannon and made a new Twitter account calling itself Z12. I don't know why and I don't know how, but with this additional cannon, the weight didn't change. It weighs just as much as Gas 72. The only thing that did change is top speed. It got reduced from 70 kilometers per hour to 51. But because it has a better engine, you have more horsepower per ton. Does the game know about this magic? It's pretty strange, I'm not gonna lie. Basically, it accelerates way faster, so it's better for short range repositioning. But when it comes to long distance racing, the older variant wins. But it's short, great upgrade. It's a phenomenal anti-air, and unlike before, it is way easier to knock them planes out. YAG 10. Judging from the last experience that we had with Gas 72 and Z12, my expectations for this thing were really high, and man did I overestimate. YAG 10 is a sniper. Yes, it does it well. Beautiful, amazing cannon. It even has a disability-friendly device that I use all the time myself. It's called rangefinder. So sniping from extremely long distances is super easy, but snipers have to be very mobile, as usually sniping positions are pretty far. YAG 10 is not fast at all, to be honest. Like, sometimes it barely moves, and that's a big issue. It means that for you to get into OP position where you will destroy the entire enemy team, it will take a solid 10 to 20 minutes of just driving. The match is already over before you even get there, or your team pushed further and now you have to catch up. However, when all the stars align and you get to your position and then enemies start coming your way, the destruction you can cause is just on another level. Every heavy tank is dead. Every guy that peeks you is dead. Phenomenal reload speed allows you to get a kill after kill after kill. Oh, that's a plane, I'm dead. And that is how your best matches will go. YAG 10 is a priority target for planes, as it has no armor, no ability to defend itself, and no ability to run away. You do have these shells, they're useless. Don't use them except for destroying open roof vehicles. But then don't use a rangefinder on them, otherwise your shells will explode before they hit the target. And it's not effective against planes either, unless it's a direct hit, but good luck with that, I mean. YAG 10 has great survivability against tanks from long range when their machine guns can't reach you, but that happens rarely. Also, there's a big problem. You can neither aim forwards nor can you aim downwards, as there's only 3 degrees of vertical gun elevation. You see this? Does it look like a hill? Because it is if you're in YAG 10. For me personally, it was extremely frustrating to play with it because there are so many potential kills that you are just too slow or simply can't get. You can take it for big maps, but if you like aggressive gameplay, then I would recommend something else. And that something else is one of the most overpowered tank in game. T-34 1940. This guy is all around phenomenal. Starting with armor, which is Russian bias graded. It is a lot easier to penetrate than SU-122, but that only tells how OP the SU is, not how bad the T-34 is. Because oh my god, the bounces you will survive is just mind-blowing. Russian bias will be pulsating through your veins. so be careful, don't overdose. Cannon, it's great, damage is just phenomenal. Does that angle look too steep to penetrate? No, not for a T-34 at least. There are few vehicles that you might find a bit more challenging to penetrate, but if you know their weak spots, then you won't find any issues at all. And weak spots are pretty easy to hit because of great ballistics, and good reload speed is just a great supplement to it. Mobility is just phenomenal as T-34 turns extremely well, and on top of that, turret rotation is better than most of USSR top tier MBTs. So if you spot an enemy by surprise, you will be able to send your shell towards them pretty quickly. This tank is just absolutely unbelievably phenomenal. Just try it, bro. You gotta try it, bro. One of the best heavy tank in game, KV-1 with L11 cannon. This big thick boy is made from pure stellinium, which makes it so penetrating it is a task in and of itself. And I'm not even talking about destroying it, as survivability of this guy is actually really, and I mean really good, so it rarely gets one-shotted, and when it does, it's usually because of this guy right here. So except that guy, if you angle a KV-1, you just stop caring about everything. Planes and their bombs are relevant, medium tanks and light tanks, they pretty much can't do anything to you. So just bait their shot, bounce it, and one-shot them back, because your cannon is pretty good. I mean, you will have to aim at weaker parts of vehicles because 76mm of penetration is not enough to shoot at a silhouette brainlessly, but there's not a lot of tanky vehicles fighting against you, so it's not a big deal. The only big deal that you might face, and I mean it's a real nightmare, and that's a German KV-1B, because that guy has better armor than you and more penetration, so it's more OP version of KV-1, but you will meet them pretty rarely. However, if you do meet them and they're not angling, then you can one-shot them here from close range. But if they're angling, then shoot them in the cannon and later try to get them through a 50-50 weak spot, because if you just go straight for the 50-50 weak spot and you bounce, you die. Oh, and also, after every shot, move your turret sideways to eliminate one massive weak spot of USSR KV-1. And that is these parts right here. They're easy to hit, and experienced players go for this part instead of cheeks that are more random. T-34 1941. If we compare it to the previous T-34, the difference is not so obvious, to be honest. This T-34 got its cannon improved and a new better BR-350B shell added, which will be your main one. It also got smoke rounds, which if you take 3 of them will be more than enough to ruin some campers' day. But overall, this T-34 1941 is higher BR for basically more penetration and a tiny bit faster reload. So technically the previous one is more OP. And now we meet the derp gun, the one and only meme machine KV-2. This boy is so massive you can see his turret sticking out 2 maps afar. Being so big, it has some insane survivability, and it is well known that killing this guy will usually take more than 2 shells. When it comes to armor, it's certainly not bad because you will bounce a couple of shots, but weak spots of this tank are pretty huge. So if you don't angle, every shell will go straight through that armor. And even though survivability of this tank is amazing, the desire to live decreases quite drastically after you see your loader dead, because base reload speed is 34 seconds, and that is with experts, which shave off 6 seconds. One loader dead means it got up to 51 seconds, but if every single loader gets knocked out, reload speed becomes 1 minute and 7 seconds long. And imagine shooting at a light tank after such a long reload and not killing it. You will instantly get put on a suicide watch, and there's a high chance of you deleting the game. So to decrease the chance of that happening, use these shells right here, because bunker destroying shells, they used to be the best option, but they got nerfed, and I would not recommend using them as they can bounce or not activate for some reason. Of course, your cannon is so huge that your damage is just on another level. If you see an open roof tank just chilling and holding your angle. Just shoot the ground and he will get vaporized. You can literally miss the tank and he gets destroyed. So this tank is purely made for fun. You can do well with it, and there's always a 50-50 of people either loving it or hating it. And now we get to a 4.0 battle rating setup, which begins with T-34 1942, which if compared to previous T-34s, there's a massive difference between the two, because this lamp got removed and this lamp to the right is not even connected. There's also this hatch that got added. It might not look like much, but that armor can withstand tiger shells no problem at all. Oh, and also the turret changed, which reduced the reload speed, but I think it did a bit more harm than good because weak spots got way bigger. And now there's this massive turret ring that is easy to hit and is a guaranteed one-shot spot. Don't get me wrong, it's still made of stellinium and bounces some crazy, unbelievable shots, and it just makes no sense sometimes, but it's a bit less frequent than for the previous T-34s. Still a very good vehicle. KV-1S. If we compare it to the previous KV-1, there's an obvious difference that instantly catches our eyes, which is this antenna being way longer, which is good. And when it comes to the turret, it did get its armor increased and got a better cannon, which has higher penetration, is really good, but it also got less vertical guidance. And from my experience, that so-called better turret doesn't feel tankier at all, because these cheeks got massive, and if someone decides to clap them, and pretty much everyone will go for them, you gotta feel it. On the bright side, even though you have such massive thick cheeks, you can still run around very quickly, as KV-1 is extremely mobile and fast. Literally feels like a medium tank. The only big issue is 4.0 BR. As of lately, it rarely gets to play against lower tiers, which means you're gonna be meeting the big ol' Bubba T1 Heavy, which starts licking his lips as soon as he spots you. There's also Vaki 3001 and KV-1C, which is a nightmare to say the least. It is possible to deal with them, but it's just difficult when it's an opponent you gotta face constantly. And the last, but certainly not least, the most insane vehicle, T-34 STZ, which got an additional add-on armor put on top of it, so now is the only tank that can literally withstand Jagdtiger as a 4.0 vehicle. It makes sense. These periscopes are made of Soviet glass extracted from these guys right here, and that adds a total of 550 millimeters of armor. There are also parts that are 880 millimeters thick, which is 4 times thicker than mouse. So let's test it. We can take one of the strongest vehicles in game, T-80 BVM, and send 3 BM60, which is its best shell, straight at the T-34E. But to make it more fair, let's not angle it this time. And yeah, I mean, what did you expect? But in reality, this T-34 did not face T-80 BVM. You don't even have to face Jagdtiger. You face Panzer III. Yes, it's a small impenetrable line. However, for some reason, literally 80% of all shots will hit exactly that spot. It's just how life works. If there's a small chance to fail, it will happen 100%. So basically, you have this medium tank with armor that can withstand anything, and if you angle, the poor Panzer III literally starts crying. Most of the time, because of 4.0 battle rating, you will face T1 heavies and M4A1s, which will be quite a difficult fight, and if they are somewhat experienced, they will always shoot you in the turret cheeks, where you get basically one-shotted. They are also stabilized, so it might be challenging to fight if you get a full up tier. But if you get blessed by Gaijin and get a top spot against 3.0 Germans, you're literally a god at that point. Just remember to always angle. So I recommend using T28 to unlock SU-122, T28E, and GAS-72K, and use this insane setup to unlock T50 and BTR-152, or just jump straight to the T-34 1940 and grab ZS-12 for more company basically. You can literally use these 3 setups to unlock everything up until KV-85 if you want to. You can change setups just to make it more interesting for yourself, that's it. A setup of KV-1, T-34, 1941, and ZS-12 is also amazing if you want some heavy tank gameplay. And if you want to go further, T-34 ESTZ and KV-1S are waiting for you as a phenomenal option. If you get placed against big boys and you get tired of it, just change back to SU-122 setup and just delete a couple of dudes to make yourself feel better. I also recommend trying out KV-2 and ZS-30 as they are pretty fun vehicles to play with and they do make your setups bigger. But what I don't recommend is Yak-10. It's slow, not fun to play with. You can absolutely try it if your gameplay is sniping people, but otherwise just ignore it. Same goes for T-80. It is fun, but there's just way better options to choose from. And I do recommend skipping Su-57B. It's just not worth your time as they're just unbelievably OP tanks, and to play with this garbage can, it's a waste of time.